Here we are in Old Town. I'm standing in front of the Slavonian Hall. And in 1987, a fateful meeting took place that led to what we see today, the Chinese Reconciliation Park. 43 years ago, the Old Town Improvement Club met here, and at the bequest of State Representative Art Wong, they came here to hear from one of Governor Booth Gardner's cabinet members, Mary Falk, who was the Director of Administrative Services. I was with her because I was a staff member with the governor at the time, while on sabbatical from the University of Puget Sound. As we had dinner across the street at a restaurant, we looked out and we saw a long line of people, and I turned to her and I said, "This is going to be a packed house tonight." That the residents and business owners of Old Town were greatly concerned about the prospect of that site along the water's edge being used for the National Guard. We walked over. She was introduced by Representative Art Wong. She had prepared remarks, and I remember clearly my friend of many years, Ken Miller, standing up. He was a resident of Old Town at the time, standing up and saying, "Madam Director, we appreciate very much the good work the governor is doing, but we're really here to find out what the status is of the National Guard site in Old Town." She put down her prepared remarks and said, "I'm here really to tell you, on behalf of the governor, there will be no National Guard site in Old Town." At which point the crowd stood as one and cheered. There was a turning point in terms of what was to happen many years later as we moved toward what we see today. Art Wong was an important figure in all of this. And a few years later, while down on Ruston Way, he ran into his good friend, City Manager Ray Corpus, and asked Ray, "We have this property, the state really doesn't want it. Should it be the cities or should it be the ports?" And Ray turned to him, City Manager Corpus turned to him and said, "It should be a part of the city's system." And so that led to the city securing that site. Shortly thereafter, in 1993, the City Council, at the bequest of the Citizens Advisory Committee involving Dr. Murdoch and Art Wong and others, and Teresa Pan-Hosley, responded by recommending, or actually mandating, that a park, a Chinese Reconciliation Park, be located on that site, that 7-acre site on the water's edge. And as they say, the rest is history. And now we'll walk over to the park and talk a little bit about what we see there and the significance of what transpired. I'm standing here along the water's edge, just down from the Chinese Reconciliation Park. This location is so appropriate, so historic, in that just about a half a mile from here toward downtown stood Little Canton, which was the community of Chinese built over the water. November 3rd of 1885, the remaining Chinese residents of Tacoma were rounded up by what Murray Morgan refers to as the raincoat mob. Rounded up, marched into downtown, and off to the railhead to take trains to Portland. That was Tacoma's method, a version of ethnic cleansing. The next day, Little Canton was burned to the water's edge. The idea being that there should be no evidence of the Chinese ever living in Tacoma. Years passed, and a skin diver was kind of exploring in that area and found a bowl, a Chinese bowl, and gifted it to the Tacoma Historical Society. That bowl, which is a remnant of the Chinese who lived on that site, is a part of our archives. It's a treasured object of our archives. So the site here was well chosen to speak to what happened in 1885 and to reconcile the issues of that time. I'm sitting in the Chinese Ting, which is a Chinese word for pavilion. It was a gift to the city of Tacoma by our sister city of Fuzhou. They brought over skilled craftsmen, and they worked with some of our local contractors to build this incredible facility. What a gift, what a treasure, and how symbolic. In 1993, the City Council passed a resolution in which it expressed on behalf of the citizens of Tacoma and the city its profound regret for what happened in 1885 and the racism and hatred that was a part of what went on during that period. So the city finally went on record, recognizing what happened in 1885 and coming up with an approach to deal with it. And part of that resolution also called for a Reconciliation Park, Chinese Reconciliation Park, to be located right here. Now, the mayor that was responsible for what happened in 1885 was Jacob Weisbach, and he came up with the notion of the Tacoma method. What made this unique was this effort to expel the Chinese, which started about a year prior to November 3rd. There was what I call a reign of terror that led to many of our Chinese residents leaving on their own accord. Then on October 3rd, there were still 200 people here, and they were rounded up and marched off to the railhead and sent on trains to Portland. This was a terrible event. So we fast forward, now I'm mayor of the city of Tacoma, and I've been invited to an event in Sichuan province, in the city of Mengyang, with the possibility of a friendship city relationship that could lead to further expressions of support for this park on the part of the Chinese. And I took with me that resolution, and in Qingdao, which is the city of pandas, there was a meeting. The Lieutenant Governor, Brad Owen, happened to be a Tacoma guy, was with me with some officials from Beijing, and it was my opportunity on behalf of the city to carry that resolution, that apology, that formal apology, and to give it formally to officials from Beijing. It was, I think, a historic moment, certainly one of the more significant moments of my tenure as mayor, to finally make an effort to begin to close that chapter. I'm standing here in the path of expulsion in the Chinese Reconciliation Park, and there's a lot of symbolism in this area, important symbolism. There are 9 pillars of basalt, and they represent the 9 members of the Committee of 9, that was a secret group of Tacoma citizens working closely with the mayor that were tasked with organizing the expulsion effort. And each of the 9 organized a cell of 9, and each of those 9 had their cells where they could communicate quickly as to the action that was going to be taken in terms of the final steps of Chinese expulsion. So on that fateful day in November, the word was that when the Lister Foundry whistle blew at 9:30, that was the signal for all the what Murray Morgan referred to as the raincoat mob to assemble, and then to move through Little Canton and up through downtown to round up all the Chinese, to pound on doors. They had rifles in hand, and to pull people out of homes and out of their establishments and march them off to the railhead, which is now in Lakewood. So these 9 pillars represent the 9 members that were central to the Chinese expulsion under the direction of the mayor. These 9 were part of the 27 members, including the mayor, that were indicted for these clearly unconstitutional acts. They were indicted but never tried, and were considered heroes, and thought that they were winners. But we remember who they were, and we remember to this day what they did. So they'll never be forgotten. And these pillars represent the hate and the racism that was a part of what happened back in 1885. This is the pathway that represents the arduous efforts that were undertaken by the Chinese sojourners, to come to this country because of their expectation that they would find Gold Mountain. That was kind of what was in the mind of the Chinese. They were lured here on that basis. That's not why they came, and that was not why they were brought here. They were brought here to do the menial tasks, the difficult tasks, many times the jobs that no one else wanted to do. So it was the California gold rush in Gold Mountain that led to many of the Chinese coming to this country. In the end, they were responsible for building Tacoma's railroads, not Tacoma Rail, the United States railroads, country's railroads, including the Second Continental Railroad that came here to Tacoma in 1873. And this is where the Chinese settled. In fact, 10% of the population was made up of Chinese. We did all the difficult work, and many of them were very, very successful and professional in what they did, and they were a central part of the Tacoma story up to 1885, during what I call the Reign of Terror and the expulsion in November of 1885, the final expulsion. It was an example of ethnic cleansing. It was led by the Mayor Jake Weisbach, who actually lived in China for a while and developed a hatred of the Chinese. He appointed himself police chief and led the effort to the expulsion of all the Chinese. Very few Chinese ever returned to Tacoma. And in fact, very few evidence of any Chinese living here in the 1920s, which essentially marked this city, differentiated it from other port cities throughout the West Coast. Seattle, Portland, Vancouver, Seattle, Tacoma, Vancouver, and San Francisco, all having Chinatowns. No evidence of the Chinese ever living in Tacoma until this Chinese Reconciliation Park was developed. And something that all of us can be very proud of. I'm standing on the wonderful String of Pearls Bridge, the Chinese bridge that symbolically connects Tacoma with China, moving east to west. Below me is the grotto where the tide comes in. And when the tide comes in here, of course it comes in China as well. This is kind of a link symbolically to the city of Tacoma and to China. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience to walk the bridge and to see the tide coming in and out. It's a treasure and a central part of the Chinese Reconciliation Park. It's wonderful. The next phase of the development of the Chinese Reconciliation Park will include the construction of a multicultural pavilion where I'm standing. Let me just read you the intent of what that will represent. This comes from Teresa Pan-Hosley of the Chinese Reconciliation Foundation. We've always envisioned that the Chinese Reconciliation Park will include a multicultural pavilion sitting at the edge of Ruston Way, overlooking Puget Sound, with children laughing and adults chatting. We see the pavilion as a place that all ethnic groups may come to converse about their problems and solutions. We see the pavilion as a place for different cultures to express their arts and folklore. We see the pavilion as a haven for children with different heritage to come to learn about their backgrounds and to build their pride and self-esteem. We see people from other places come to admire the beauty of Puget Sound, will stop at the Chinese Reconciliation Park and feel that they are welcome. This is our next phase.